The streak is officially over. The Denver Broncos beat the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday afternoon on a cold, gloomy day at Empower Field at Mile High. How did the Broncos put together a complete game in every facet? We're going to dive deep into that and much more in today's brand new episode, Locked on Broncos.
You are Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
The Broncos' 16-game losing streak to the Kansas City Chiefs is officially over after the team, Denver, dominated the Chiefs on Sunday afternoon at Empower Field at Mile High. Welcome into a brand new episode of Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much to everybody in Broncos Country for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day every single day, and a special shout-out to all the everydayers through the good, through the bad, through the monumental wins like this game on Sunday. We appreciate you so much for rocking with us here. Locked on Broncos. You can get this podcast for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure you do us a favor. If you're not done so already, hit that subscribe or that follow button down below so you never miss out on what's going on in Broncos country. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports. Joined alongside, as always, by Sayre Bedinger, site expert, predominantlyorange.com. Sayre, my friend, it feels like it's been a long time coming, right? The last time you and I saw the Denver Broncos beat the Kansas City Chiefs, it involved a scoop and score on a Thursday night football game years back, and that year Denver would go on to win the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs have dominated the Broncos, have controlled the narrative, have owned the series for 16 straight games, and they were looking to make it 17, but the Broncos defense and the offense found a way to come out and say, hey, not anymore. We're done with that. We're moving forward.
Cody, the Broncos now officially have as many wins against the Chiefs since that night as they do Super Bowl victories, right? So we're tied 1-1 in that regard. But man, it does feel good to be finally talking about another victory against the Kansas City Chiefs. The Broncos, obviously, as you mentioned, ending their own 16-game losing streak against the Chiefs. And I heard on the broadcast, Cody, 16 straight wins for the Kansas City Chiefs against the AFC West. Now that streak is ended as well. So the Broncos ending a couple streaks in this one, but this game is so much more important than ending a streak against the Kansas City Chiefs. It's about what is beginning from this, what's being birthed from this, the change in the locker room, the change in the winds of the Mile High City. There's something new, something fresh in the air now, Cody. It's that winning feeling. It's contagious. And I think that definitely, as much as we talked early in this season about how this Broncos team needs to learn how, not to lose, learning how to win was critical. And for them to get a victory against Kansas City, man, I can't think of a more signature win. That's the only term that I can really think of. I don't know, maybe you can think of one, Cody. I think of some great wins against the Cowboys and things like that, but it pales in comparison to beating the Kansas City Chiefs and what this means right now.
I had a lot of Broncos fans in my Twitter mentions afterwards. They said, hey, like outside, this is the biggest win since Super Bowl 50. And I think that, looking at how bad Denver has been since Super Bowl 50, like this is a huge win. Like let's not be, let's not look it over or gloss over. Like this is a monumental win for Denver. Because Sayre, what was it? You and I were talking when Denver was at 1-4 and like, wow, all right, well, hey, they've got 2 or 3 games left at this point, at this juncture. Denver's either going to go into the bye week at 1-7, or they're going to go into it at 3-5. Well, hey, they rattle off 2 consecutive wins in a row here, Sayre. And right now, it's like, okay, now Denver's going into the bye week. Sayre, to me, I look at where Denver is at, and obviously there's some things that they're going to obviously have to continue to improve on. We'll talk about that here, but we're going to talk about the good here first on Victory Monday podcast. Wow, it's been a while since we've been able to do that, except last week against Green Bay. But this is a huge, huge, huge win for this Broncos team. But for me, I look at the momentum that they can get going into the bye week. Obviously, they came out of the game relatively healthy, which I think is a great sign for them. But then I think it gives them momentum as they get ready for their next game on Monday Night Football here in just about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks' time from this date. So this could be a win, Sayre, and we talk about it. You need to be able to catch fire at some point, right? This could be the win. What have we been saying here? Sean Payton's been saying it. Can the team flip the switch? I felt like today they flipped the switch, Sayre, in a big way.
I did too. It really felt like that. I mean, man, typically against the Kansas City Chiefs, and we touched on this in the crossover episode, we talked about it all throughout the week. really the Broncos not being able to get out of their own way has been the story of however many of the last Kansas City Chiefs matchups you want to point to over the last 8 years, right? And it just feels like, man, if it's not a muffed punt, it's giving up a kickoff return for a touchdown after you score, or throwing an interception after you force a fumble, or things like that. And there was some of that in this game. Like, honestly, this was not the cleanest game by the Broncos, but man, it felt like what typically happens to the Broncos was happening to the Chiefs, right? I mean, that's kind of what it seemed like. The Chiefs get a defensive stop. Seems like they've got all the momentum. Then all of a sudden, Mecole Hardman fumbles the ball. The Broncos had the ball, at the 10-yard line. So things like that, just it feel like maybe this game could be a switch flipper, like one of those types of you listen to the players, you listen to Sean Payton say this won't be the biggest win for this team, right? And you hear those types of things, and that gets you hopeful once again, not necessarily of okay, well, this team now is going to be going to the playoffs. Like, let's slow the roll there. Obviously, we want to see what happens over the course of the season, but I think at the same time, it's a level of excitement that it comes from within. Like, when the players are excited, I think it rejuvenates the entire fan base.
It certainly does. And man, I tell you this, like just being up in the press box. I mean, Sayre, I haven't heard it that loud at Empire Field in quite some time. Like the press box was shaking, right? And you always used to see it back when they were when it was Invesco Field at Mile High. The press box would shake. I mean, on first down, it would shake. Second down, it would shake. Third down, it would shake. And especially when they forced the Chiefs late in that game into some fourth down situations. I like how you mentioned how they, needed to overcome some bad things like going for it on fourth down, not getting it, some bad penalties, some poor decisions, giving up sacks. But those stuff didn't deter Denver, even though that, Denver was really in control of this game from start to finish. But there were moments, right, where like, you can't make these types of mistakes against Kansas City. Denver was able to capitalize on it by forcing Kansas City to make mistakes of their own behind a very, very strong defensive performance. And look, Broncos country, we're going to dive deep into that here. What did the Broncos defense do well? What stood out in their big time win here against the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday? Well, you're going to get all that on today's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos. Today's Locked On Broncos is brought to you by our friends over there at eBay Motors. And our partners at eBay Motors, they've teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. And whether you're prepping for a daily draft or you're scouting the waiver wire, every single week, we're going to provide you with players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Let's take a look at Carolina Panthers running back Chuba Hubbard. He got the lead duties in Week 8 against the Houston Texans, despite Miles Sanders being available. And although Hubbard struggled to get going in that matchup, he should find more running back room at home against the Colts, breaking down front. The Carolina Panthers' power running should yield better results, but Hubbard can also have a bigger impact in the passing game to deliver all around as a fantasy sleeper. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors, they know a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. It's the same with your vehicle. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure that your ride stays running smoothly. If you need brake kits for your new vehicle, if you need LED headlights, a roof rack, bumpers, or whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has everything that you can be looking for, and you'll always get exactly what you're searching for. eBay delivers that to you directly. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it is guaranteed to fit your ride for the first time, every single time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Make sure you keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Once again, keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Were the Kansas City Chiefs a get-right game for the Denver Broncos defense a couple weeks ago? It was certainly a great performance on Sunday in Week 8, but you can trace some of the success we've seen from the Denver Broncos lately all the way back to that Week 6 Thursday night matchup where they started to get things going. We're going to break down what went well for the Denver Broncos defense besides pretty much everything against the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll break down some individual aspects of it on this Victory Monday podcast. Cody, like you said, I mean, you almost have to write that down somewhere so I don't forget how to say it. It's back-to-back Victory Monday podcast, and we can't thank you enough for making us part of your Victory Monday. Locked On Broncos, available free and everywhere that you listen to podcasts, as well as on YouTube, where you can watch Cody and I. You can engage with us and other members of Broncos Country in the comment section. And I just got to say, your encouragement means so much to Cody and I. For those of you that take the time to actually write messages, give us feedback on the podcast, just to let us know that you're thankful for us, that means the world to us. And we read every single one of those, and we try to respond to as many as we can. So thank you so much for that. And for you everydayers out there, mile high salute to you. Hope you're having a great start to the week here on Victory Monday. Cody, let's break down this defensive performance, because it was quite the performance from the defense, from the front to the back. And I mean that both in the sense of the Broncos defensive front to the secondary, as well as from the start to the end of the game. Hit me with some of your biggest takeaways from the Broncos defense in this game.
I just came out impressed with just how much energy that they had, right? And usually I think the first couple of plays of the game, you're trying to gauge, like you're watching up there, and I think you're trying to see it out on the broadcast if you're watching at home, is, okay, hey, what does Denver's defense do on that first play? And it was a run play to Isaiah Pacheco, and I just see Jonathan Cooper, Alex Singleton, Josie Jewell, they fly, and they're ferocious, and they're attacking the ball. I mean, Denver's first drive defensively, Patrick Mahomes, and look, Denver won the coin toss. They defer to the second half. Mahomes and them, they get the ball to start things off, and Denver forces a 3-and-out, like against Kansas City. Like, Sayre, I'm very curious. There's got to be somebody out there that might know. When was the last time that Denver forced Kansas City to have a 3-and-out? I feel like it's been a while, but for the first drive of the game, like, that was huge. And look, coming into it, and I think you might see some of this. We might get some in the comments. There were a lot of Chiefs fans last week that were jumping into our comments, talking very reckless, and, hey, your team's a very, very good team, but good victory here by the Broncos. But you're going to get excuses. Well, Mahomes had the flu. Well, Sayre, if Mahomes had the flu and the Chiefs won, then they'd be like, oh, Mahomes, he had the flu. He battled through it. What a competitor. Like, Here's the reality of the situation. While Mahomes may have had the flu, the Broncos defense, they were on him. They were contagious. And that was something I think that really stood out to me in this game. They flowed to the football really well. They were disciplined in a lot of the areas. The communication on the back end of the secondary between the corners and the safeties and the linebackers, I felt like was very, very good. And once again, gosh, Denver might have a gem on their hands here, Sayre. I came away thoroughly impressed with Jaquan McMillan here in this game once again, right? A couple weeks ago against Kansas City, we're like, hey, number 29, he's out there. He's making plays. Denver might have a gem at nickel here with Jaquan McMillan. I felt like his performance against the run, he was the second leading tackler behind Alex Singleton, but that interception he had there, great instinctual football here. Denver's got some dogs on that defense. And look, I think as bad as they got off to that start this season, hats off and credit to Vance Joseph for what they were able to do. They have done a tremendous turnaround in the last couple of weeks here with the defensive side of the ball. What stood out in your opinion?
Well, what stood out to me was the score next to Kansas City's logo on my TV screen at the end of the day, which was a number 9, right? I mean, that is crazy to me to see. I'm old enough to remember, Cody, a couple weeks back. Remember the Broncos? They obviously gave up 70 points to the Miami Dolphins, and people on Twitter are saying, if the Broncos gave up 70 to the Dolphins, what's going to happen in a few weeks when they play the Kansas City Chiefs? Kansas City might score 100 on the Broncos, right? That's what we were hearing. But man, in 2 games combined, 28 total points from Kansas City's vaunted offense. And we know that they've had some struggles this season, but really, I mean, it was, like I said, from the front to the back. But I want to highlight the pass rush. Man, the pass rush, we've been calling out for the entire season, waiting for these guys to emerge. We heard all the stuff in training camp about Nick Bonito, Jonathan Cooper. It was a little slow going for those guys at the beginning of the year, but slowly, surely they have crept into this realm of, man, they're consistently disruptive. Now you add Baron Browning into the mix. This is the game changer we talked about that the Denver Broncos needed. What have we said on this show before? If we haven't said it enough, let me say it again. How desperately did the Broncos defense need somebody who, like Von Miller, could come out there and change the game or shut down a game, like at the end with a strip sack or a big sack at the end of a game to push your offense or the opposing offense into a third and unmanageable situation. Baron Browning is that guy. And I know that everybody else on the D line, Zach Allen played a great game. Cooper, Benito, they all had great games. But Baron Browning, to me, is the catalyst for the success of that entire pass rush unit, because he's getting around the tackles, Cody. I mean, he's making it look easy out there, and it's not that easy. But man, the dude is a flat out stud, and I love that the Broncos have him back healthy. They clearly, the rehab process, I don't think enough can be said about that, to how fresh he looks, how explosive he looks, how it looks like he's been playing all year. It doesn't look like he's coming off an injury whatsoever.
4 sacks total here. I mean, technically in this game, I mean, Denver, I think early on in this game had trouble, and actually it's 3 sacks, not 4. Barron had 2 of those sacks, as you're alluding to, and then you had Jonathan Cooper and Zach Allen coming up with 1. And here's the thing about I think a defining drive defensively. They told me, like, hey, this defense, they're not playing around. And it was towards late in that game there where Kansas City had no timeouts remaining, right? And they had to go down. It was a 2-score game. You have Cooper and you have Allen that come up with a combined sack. And then the very next play, it's 3rd down, right? 3rd and long. Baron Browning comes up with the sack there. And okay, now guess what? It's going to be 4th and long. They have to go for it to try to get momentum. Justin Simmons interception. And that was really great pressure once again from that defensive line. And we're starting to see things click now here for this defense. And I think, as you mentioned there, the pass rush is a major catalyst for the success that they've had there. I think having DJ Jones, Mike Purcell, look, there were even times Denver came out in the 4-3. I'm not sure if you noticed that, but Denver would come out in the 4-3, and the 3rd linebacker would be Drew Sanders. So you'd have Drew, you'd have Josie, you'd have Alex Singleton, and then you have obviously your guys in the secondary. I continue to come away even more impressed every single week by Patrick Surtain, which, it's hard to say at this point, but man, great coverage by him, great coverage by Jaquan McMillan. Even at times, Fabian Moreau. Like, there were a couple of times where Fabian Moreau got in the open field, on an end-around play or a run play. But Denver's defense didn't have any back-breaking plays there. You're like, oh my gosh, like, they're not going to be able to recover from that. To me, once again, right, we talked about it in that Thursday night game. Okay, hey, Denver holds the Chiefs' offense to 1 touchdown. Like, that's impressive. Denver's defense in this game held the Chiefs to 0 total touchdowns. I mean, their red zone efficiency wasn't good. They were 0 for 3 in the red zone. They were 3 of 10 on 3rd down. What were we talking about in the keys to the game? Maintain what you're able to do in the red zone. Denver did that, and they did it even better this game. And also on 3rd down, they did it even better. What is it, 40% the last game or something along the lines? 30% in this game. And you tell me that the Chiefs offense, they're only going to have 18 total first downs in the game. I would have been like, you are crazy. Denver capitalized in a big, big way here defensively with guys on the back end of the secondary. That was probably one of the better defensive performances we've seen from this team, Sayre, since Super Bowl 50. Not comparing the two, right? Because they're obviously not close. But from a defensive standpoint, this was complete and utter domination in all 3 phases. And even then, right, that's the thing about Kansas City that's so allurious about them is, even if that's the case, even if you're up at that point where Denver was at, 14 to 3 at one point, you're like, gosh, this still doesn't feel like big enough, right? It doesn't feel like a big enough lead. It was, and it mattered there. And I think for Denver, 5 total takeaways that they forced in this game. Gosh, Sayre, that's huge. This is a massive, massive win here for the Broncos, and we have to give a lot of credit to Vance Joseph for what he was able to do. And Denver's defense, once again, 11 quarterback hits, 6 tackles for a loss, and Jaquan McMillan being a big proponent of that there. And also thought PJ Locke did a great job stepping in. So a lot to be proud of here for this Broncos defense. I know tomorrow when we do our episode, after we hear from Sean Payton at his Monday conference call, we'll definitely hand out some game balls because we're going to go back and rewatch the game as well. But a lot to look forward to here for the Broncos. The offense, though, helped them out in a big way, but there's still some areas of concern. What did the Broncos do enough of in order to help them secure the victory on Sunday? We're going to get that on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. This episode of Locked On Broncos, our post-game report, is brought to you by our friends over there at DoorDash. And to help celebrate Victory Monday, why don't you get something delivered directly to your door with DoorDash here today? Or anytime that there's a game day, did the game ever go to a timeout? Well, it's time to order in with DoorDash. If it's halftime, that's ordering time. If it's a 2-minute warning, well, you got it. That's your cue to order in here today with DoorDash. You can order pizza, wings, soda, burgers, or even just buns on DoorDash, and you can get it all delivered without missing the game. And if you're in the Denver area, one of my go-tos, I like Illegal Pete's in terms of supporting local businesses. I'm also a Five Guys burger guy myself, right? You can get Five Guys, you can get Illegal Pete's delivered directly to your door. You want a burger and a shake, they got you. You want a burrito that's double packed with protein, they got you on DoorDash. Kick back and at kickoff with unbeatable deals on everything that you need for the watch party or tailgate. and score football season's best deals on groceries, restaurants, retail, and more. You get all your favorite restaurants and stores from retail to grocery, all on an app, so you can shop for everything that you need to get game day ready. Get prepared before game day, stock up on your favorite appetizers, and order all your tailgate gear on DoorDash. Then get ready to watch your team win. Get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and you enter code LOCKED23. Once again, get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change. Terms apply. As we jump to the fourth quarter action on today's Victory Monday podcast, Broncos postgame report. The Broncos dominate the Chiefs in all three phases in Sunday's victory, snapping a 16-game losing streak to the Kansas City Chiefs. We just want to say thank you so much to everybody in Broncos Country for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day every single day, wherever you get your podcast. We appreciate you so much. Through the good, the bad, and big wins like this, it makes it even more meaningful for the community that we've built here at Locked On Broncos. We're so grateful for all of you here. Sayre, let's talk about the offense here in terms of Sunday's game. Now, I felt like Denver, once again, going down on their first drive, scoring. I think it was their first two drives. They were able to put up some points. But for me, we saw some of the things you and I have been talking about here on the show. Hey, this is the way for the Broncos. If they do these things, they're going to have a much better chance at winning. And what was that? It was running the football. And Denver got off to a pretty good start at doing that against the Kansas City Chiefs.
They did, Cody, and it felt like it was a major emphasis. I know Sean Payton kind of after the game tried a little bit to downplay the fact that, well, you get into the 4-minute offense and all of a sudden you're, running the ball 8 to 10 times more than you might otherwise. But Broncos also had a quick little 1 minute or less drill right before the end of the first half. So maybe some artificial passing attempts thrown in there as well. In terms of the overall number, I think it evened out pretty well to the point where we could see like, hey, the lean was to the running game. And Javonte Williams specifically in this game was emphasized in the game plan, not just as a runner out of the backfield, but the Broncos targeting him in the passing game where, hey, he scored his first touchdown since 2021 as a receiver there, plowing his way into the end zone. And it was great to see. And it continues to be great to see Javonte Williams playing and looking fresh. I know the yards per carry average isn't exactly where you want it to be, but look, you got to remember also that the Broncos were trying to execute 4-minute offense at the end of the game. They were willing to live with a lot of no gain plays or short gain plays at the end in order to, run the clock out. So you kind of got to look at Javonte's game before the end when they're basically kneeling on the ball effectively with him. And so it was a great game. I mean, he was breaking off big chunks. He was breaking tackles. He was what I continue to be impressed by with Javonte, Cody, and you could tell me if you're seeing the same thing. I feel like his vision was a huge question mark in his rookie year. A lot of people saying, well, you can see the former linebacker in him, right? That he doesn't quite read the running lanes just right. I feel like his vision has improved tremendously in 2023. So shout out, I guess, to running backs coach Lou Ayeni and that whole crew offensively that's helping Javonte improve as an overall player.
And look, I think that's the biggest key, right? Does Javonte have the confidence coming off of that injury, right? We've talked about the mental hurdle of it. And I know he dealt with the quad injury early on in the season, but man, he's fully healthy. He looks good and he's reliable. Now, there's times it's like, I wish that the offensive line, obviously, and this is going to happen in football, right? There's times where Javonte hits the hole, gets a 15-yard gain, right? And then he gets tackled for a 2-yard loss because the guy misses their blocking assignment, or at least that's how it looks live when you're watching it. To go back and watch the game here again. But I also felt like there also were times in this game where my frustration about what Sean Payton has done kind of creeps up, right? There was one play, there was one drive. Denver had a 15-yard run with Javonte Williams. I think it was to open up the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken. And then they go 2 passing plays in a row, incomplete, and then he gets sacked on third down. Russell Wilson does. He was sacked 5 times on the afternoon. And to me, I was like, man, like the 15-yard run you had it with Javonte was working. Why did you go away from that, right? And there's still some things, and it even seemed like there were a couple times where the Broncos have a play call, Russ would audible, and it didn't seem like Sean Payton was happy with the audible, whatever it may be. That's just speculation from seeing the reaction, the discussion from up in the press box down on the field, the Payton there. But Denver had some miscues, right? Obviously, after they're burning a timeout in one play, and then they open up, coming out of the timeout with an illegal formation. It's just, I think the frustrating thing is that Denver's made these mistakes this season, but more importantly, you and I have emphasized it. You cannot make these mistakes against a team like Kansas City. Luckily, Denver's defense kind of rose up to the occasion, but I think the run game worked out relatively well here, right? And Jerry Jeudy got involved a little bit early on here in this game. He had a 39-yard catch and an 11-yard touchdown. It's so weird because when you look at it, Russell Wilson didn't put up a lot of numbers in the passing game, but efficient, 12 of 19. He also threw three touchdowns, one to Javonte in the opening drive, the one to Jeudy we just mentioned, and then Cortland Sutton. Does Denver, Sayre, and I'll throw this out to you, does Denver need Russ to throw for 350 yards? Or, are you okay if, hey, 3 touchdowns on 140 yards in a game? Is that something where you'd be okay with that? Because I feel like that this might be the formula, but it only works, Sayre, if the run game is going. And obviously, Denver, they finished with over 153 yards on the ground in this game on Sunday. To me, that's where this identity is for them.
Yeah, if you're running the ball well, if you're executing, I think there's no issues with it. Now, where I do have issues is the fact that the passing game is limiting the team on third downs. You're not able to extend drives. You're unable to convert off of the Jaquan McMillan interception that you mentioned before. That was largely to do with the passing game. Once again, you had a almost 9-minute drive to open the third quarter. Can't convert a third down when you get down close to the red zone, causes you to have to kick a field goal, and you get the field goal blocked. All of a sudden you have no points. So the lack of a passing game, although 12 of 19 seems okay on paper, those 7 incompletions plus the 5 sacks that you mentioned, those are 12 plays that you got to go back and really evaluate with a critical eye, because the passing game for Denver's offense right now is holding this team back from having a truly dynamic offense. And that isn't going to work well in the long run. Now, of course, if the outcome of the game is a 15-point victory each week, nobody's going to care about the statistics for the passing game. Nobody's going to care about what was the story between A to B. As if the Broncos continue winning, the stats don't matter, right? The way Russell Wilson is playing individually doesn't matter necessarily if the team is winning, right? Obviously, he contributed to the win. He threw 3 touchdowns. He did not have an interception. He took sacks instead of, I guess, throwing the ball into harm's way. So there are positives to be gleaned from it. There were some nice penalties drawn by the team that don't get added into the mix in terms of your overall passing statistics. But I think overall, Cody, the offense, it could have been the reason the Broncos gave this game up. I mean, the fumble, the muffed punt by Mecole Hardman was a very, very big turning point for the Broncos in this game to be able to have a shot, and not give Patrick Mahomes too many shots. So that was a huge turning point, and the offense kind of lucked out in a way. But you're right, the defense rose to the occasion. Can't take away from that. But there are major things during the bye week this offense needs to figure out.
And I feel like one of them too. And look, this is just from me watching it live, Sayre. I just feel like at times when Russ is using his legs, right, and obviously having mobility is good, being able to extend plays is good, but when he does that, I feel like his awareness around him or behind him isn't always where it needs to be, and it leads to him holding on to the ball a little too long. Not just, I think the coaching staff would be okay. Just throw the ball away, right? And obviously in situations you got to protect it. He was going to go pick up I think it was on 4th down. He scrambled to the right side again, got the ball punched out, and it went out of bounds luckily there, but he's also going to do a better job protecting the football when he's a mobile runner there. But there were some runs, once again, where we saw Russell Wilson just dip up underneath, run, slide, and there was a time he even slid and got hit, and I was surprised there wasn't a flag there. But, 8 carries for him, 30 yards, despite the fact he was sacked 5 times. Like, I guess that's a pretty promising thing. But I agree. There's always room to improve, and I'll be very curious. We'll hear from Sean Payton on Monday on the conference call. What is it that he thinks the offense can do better now that he has a chance to go back and watch the film? And look, Broncos Country, we're going to hand out game balls on tomorrow's episode, Locked On Broncos. We'll hear some recap here from Broncos head coach Sean Payton on his conference call with myself and other members of the media. You'll get all that reaction and much more here on Locked On Broncos. But that'll wrap up today's post-game show of Locked On Broncos. We appreciate you so much once again, Broncos Country. Let us know how you're feeling on this Victory Monday if you're watching on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.